Adventure bikes seem to be as popular as ever in 2021, with an absolute shed-load of new and updated bikes announced over the past few months. So here are the cream of the crop by manufacturer in alphabetical order, and I'll preview a few that are still to be announced at the end. But before we get started, if you're new here and you want to see all of the latest motorcycle news right here on YouTube, then please do remember to hit subscribe. 2021 marks 40 years of BMW's GS line of bikes, and their whole lineup has had a refresh, as well as a special anniversary paint job that's available across the entire range. The most affordable is the G310 GS, which puts out 34 horsepower from its 313cc single-cylinder engine. Updates for 2021 include a revised throttle, a slip assist clutch, an LED headlight and indicators, adjustable clutch and brake levers, a titanium grey finish on the engine casings, and a couple of new paint jobs. If you're looking for something a little more substantial, then there's the F750 GS, which uses the same twin-cylinder engine as the next bike up, the F850 GS, but in a lower state of tune. It's still good for 77 horsepower though, and 83 Nm of peak torque, so it's a huge jump up from the G310. Improvements for the new model year include LED indicators, a USB charging point, and lean-sensitive ABS and traction control, all as standard. There's also now an optional upgrade for a dynamic riding mode that opens up engine braking control and dynamic brake control. This is certainly a bike to consider if you're a smaller rider looking for a capable adventure bike, as the seat height is already pretty low at 815mm, and with a lowering kit it can go right down to 760, which is basically a cruiser. Now the slightly bigger sibling to the 750 is the F850 GS, with power up to 95 horsepower and a peak torque of 92 Nm. Seat height also shoots up to 860mm in standard form, owing to more suspension travel and ground clearance to give it more capability off-road. It gets the same updates as the 750 GS with the LED indicators, USB charging, and lean-sensitive rider aids, but there's also a 6.5-inch TFT dash as standard, which includes phone connectivity. This means that music, calls, and navigation can all be accessed through the dash, and there's a new adjustable windscreen too. Up another notch is the 850 GS Adventure, which is even taller still and has a much bigger tank capacity of 23 litres as opposed to 15. That gives it a massive potential range of 340 miles, which makes it the obvious choice for long-distance touring. All of this year's updates are the same as the base 850, and I think it looks particularly good in this Kalamata colour scheme with the Rally package. But the big daddy of the BMW Adventure range, and arguably the entire adventure bike market, is the 1250 GS, and this bike has also had a few neat improvements. It retains the same fundamentals, with the 1250cc Boxer Twin putting out 136 horsepower peak courtesy of their shift cam variable valve tech. But it does get a new eco riding mode which sips on fuel and encourages the rider to be economical with the throttle via a new readout on the TFT dash. Lean-sensitive ABS and traction control also now come as standard, and there's a whole raft of new optional extras, including pro riding modes, Hill Start Control Pro, an adaptive headlight with a welcome animation, integrated rear indicators and brake lights, heated seats, an SOS button, and many, many more. It's still basically the benchmark for all adventure bikes, and these new features should help to keep it as the second best-selling motorcycle in the UK. The bestseller, of course, is the 1250 GS Adventure. This is the more rugged version of the 1250, with more suspension travel, a taller seat height, spoke wheels as standard, a bigger tank for more range, and some extra off-road friendly kit like handguards and wider foot pegs. All of the updates from the standard 1250 are applied to this model as well, and this is the one that looks seriously good in the 40th anniversary black and yellow colour scheme. Now, it's questionable as to whether the R9T Urban GS really counts as an adventure bike, but if you want something a little more old school than BMW's modern GSs, then this could be it. There's not much in the way of tech, and it's clearly less capable in terms of long-distance touring and light off-roading, but it has to be said that it's a handsome thing to look at, and for me it more so captures the spirit of the R100 GS that the 40th anniversary paint job is based upon. All of the R9T range got an update this year with lean-sensitive rider aids as standard, road and rain riding modes, a revised suspension strut for better comfort, LED lighting and a revised dash. Now that's all the BMWs out of the way, and on to Ducati, who have certainly made a splash with their new multistrada V4. Previously, the multistrada was only available as a V-twin, but the 4-cylinder engine from their Panigales and Street Fighter has been adapted for adventure bike use. Gone are their signature desmodromic valves in favor of more traditional spring-actuated valves, and the result is a massive improvement in service intervals, which makes total sense for a bike that will hopefully be putting in plenty of miles. It hasn't sacrificed that much power though. It's still capable of 170 horsepower peak, which makes it the most powerful bike on the adventure market by some stretch, and there's loads of impressive new tech too. Front and rear facing radars have opened up adaptive cruise control, meaning that the multistrada V4 can follow undulating motorway traffic at a set distance, and there's also blind spot detection, which flashes in the mirror when a vehicle is coming round you. To get these features, you'll have to opt for the S version, which costs £18,395, then spec it up with the travel and radar package for another £2,000, so it isn't cheap, but still, what a bike. The V4 replaces the V-twin 1260 multistrada, but the smaller 950 remains in the range. Midway through last year, they gave it a subtle 2021 refresh with a new paint option for the S model called GP White. With the blocks of grey, black and white and pops of red on the frame and wheels, I think this one looks particularly good. Much like BMW's Urban GS, the Ducati Scrambler Desert Sled offers a more retro take on the adventure format with more simplistic tech and an old-school look. Mechanically, it's the same as before, but it also gets a new red, white and blue paint job for 2021. Now, this is not a name that you'd typically expect to find on a list like this, but Harley-Davidson have entered the arena and it looks like they've made a proper go of it. The Pan America has been a few years in the making, but this month the full specs and details were finally unveiled and it looks pretty impressive. Their new liquid-cooled Revolution Max V-twin is capable of a whopping 150 horsepower, the weight looks reasonable, braking is well spec'd, and there's some innovative tech like the adaptive ride height feature which lowers the bike as it comes to a standstill to make it easier to get your feet down. They've even priced it well, with $14,000 looking pretty competitive and $15,500 for the premium special model seeming pretty fair as well. It just depends what you think of the looks, which, as I've said before, seem to divide opinion. On to another company that certainly isn't new to the adventure market, and that's Honda. The Africa Twin 1100 is one of my favourites, whether it's in the more stripped-back off-road base spec or the tricked-out touring-biased adventure sports with its bigger bodywork and fuel tank. There's the option of their automatic DCT gearbox on either version, which is a genuine unique selling point, offering seamless shifting on your behalf, which gives it a nice, luxurious feel. 2021 didn't bring any major updates, but the tricolour paint job on the adventure sports is so popular that they also made a similar scheme available for the more affordable base bike. And it has to be said, as far as adventure bikes go, this one is a looker. The NC750X is a more road-biased bike and makes for a super popular commuter as it's reliable, well-built and affordable. That said, you could also conceivably do a bit of touring and even some light trails if you were feeling brave. 2021 saw a decent update with 4 more horsepower at 58 peak, shorter gears in 1st, 2nd and 3rd for snappier acceleration, whilst taller gears are used in 4th, 5th and 6th, returning better fuel economy whilst cruising. There's now a slip assist clutch on the non-DCT version for a lighter lever action, a ride-by-wire throttle opens up customizable riding modes, and a new LCD dash and LED lighting round off the improvements in tech. The chassis has also been lightened with 6 kilograms shed, seat height is down by 30mm to a very accessible 800, and there are tweaks and improvements to the bodywork too. All of these changes have been applied to the XAD V750, which is essentially the same bike, but with a scooter-style step-over and floorboard setup, offering some extra practicality for commuting and the like. At the more hardcore off-road end of the spectrum, there's the dual sport-inspired CRF 300L and its slightly more distance-capable rally version. Capacity was increased for the new model year from 250cc to 286, increasing power by 3 horses to 27 peak, and torque is also up by 4 Nm with again 27 peak. Like the NC, it gets shorter gears apart from the top, which is lengthened for fuel economy, whilst the slip assist clutch has also been introduced. There's 4 kilograms less weight, extra travel in the suspension, and a narrowed waist to aid maneuverability, all combining for a much improved ride. The main differences on the Rally are a windscreen and a much bigger fuel capacity of 12.8 litres as opposed to 7.8, which gives it a much improved range of around 250 miles. So this is definitely the one you want if you're after a more capable all-rounder, although it does cost an extra £1,000. Now, Kawasaki's Versys 1000 has proven pretty popular over the years, providing plenty of power and comfort at a relatively affordable price, but previously it was only available in two versions, the standard Versys 1000 and the premium SE spec, which came with semi-active electronic suspension, a TFT dash, heated grips, adaptive headlights and more. But there was a big gulf in price from 11 grand for the standard bike up to almost 15 for the SE, and so now Kawasaki have plugged that hole for 2021 with a new S model at £13,000. So you get the same 1043cc inline-4 engine with 118 horsepower, radially mounted monoblock brakes derived from the Z1000, lean-sensitive rider aids, cruise control and more, but with all of the extras from the SE model except the electronic suspension. So if you want the comfort of heated grips and the better TFT dash, but you aren't that bothered about the latest suspension tech, then the S is a good way to save a couple of grand. The smaller sibling of the Versys 1000 is the 650 with a parallel twin that makes around 65 horsepower. Again, it's another popular all-rounder, capable of commuting and touring, and all at a super affordable price point. No big updates to speak of this year, but there are 3 new colour schemes of green, white or grey. 2021 does, however, mark the return of Kawasaki's iconic budget adventurer, the KLR 650. It was discontinued a couple of years back owing to stricter emissions regulations, but has now been updated to meet modern standards. The engine has been improved with fuel injection and new cam profiles. ABS is available for the first time. There's a new LCD dash to replace the old analog clocks, and the frame and ergonomics have been revised for better stability and comfort. It also gets new bodywork to bring it in line with Kawasaki's other current bikes, although all of these changes come with a weight penalty of 10 kilograms, which takes the total wet weight up to 206. Now, just this week, KTM announced an updated version of their 1290 Super Adventure R, and there are plenty of improvements to an already capable bike. The chassis has been reworked with the steering head moved back for sharper turning, whilst the swing arm has been lengthened to compensate for the shorter frame. It now also gets the 3-cell fuel tank design that holds its weight lower either side of the bike, and there are incremental improvements to the dash, rider aids, suspension, tyres, cooling system, keyless ignition and more. The 1290 Super Adventure is also available in a more road-biased Touring S version, which is based upon the same platform and 160 horsepower V-twin, but it comes with cast wheels and lower suspension, resulting in a lower seat height. Like the multistrada V4, this bike also comes with a radar-enabled adaptive cruise control system, but in this case, it's a standard feature on a 15 grand bike. So if you're doing a lot of motorway work but don't have 20 grand to spend, then this one is certainly worth a look. KTM also updated their middleweight 790 adventure bikes with the 890 version of their parallel twin that had already been rolled out to their naked bikes. The extra 90 cc's of capacity translate to 10 more horsepower with a new peak of 105, and they've also added mass to the internals of the engine to give it more momentum, increasing the feeling of torque in the lower revs. The clutch, gearbox, suspension, chassis and rider aids have all seen some minor improvements, and there's still a premium rally model available at £18,699, which adds carbon bodywork, upgraded suspension and a Kropovich exhaust, a straight racing seat, slimmer rims, rally foot pegs and a dedicated rally riding mode, all fitted as standard. I've always been a big fan of Moto Guzzi's V85 TT, as it certainly brings a different flavour to the adventure market. It's got some semi-retro 80s Dakar looks, and the 80 horsepower transverse V-twin has a character all of its own. For 2021, they've revised the engine's valve timing and lift for a bit more mid-range shove, whilst new rims take tubeless tyres, which should make for easier repairs on the road. The existing riding modes of street, rain and off-road are now joined by sport and custom, but my favourite update has to be the new Centenario colour scheme, which is available across their entire lineup to mark 100 years of Moto Guzzi. For me, it looks best on this bike though, with the brushed tank, green bodywork and brown saddle all adding a touch of class. Royal Enfield's Himalayan has remained largely unchanged for the new model year, with the same 24 horsepower single-cylinder engine in a steel cradle frame with basic but effective suspension and brakes. But why mess with a winning formula? It sells well, and that's because they keep it simple, resulting in a super tempting price. That said, 2021 brings the introduction of their trip and navigation device which pairs with your phone, their switchable ABS at the rear for better off-roading, more cushioning in the seat to help with comfort, and the rear rack is now flush with the saddle to make mounting the bike easier, whilst the rack plate comes as standard that can be used to tie down luggage. There are plenty of new colour schemes as well, and no doubt that's enough to keep this bike selling. The Tiger 900 is still pretty fresh, so there's no need to update it this year, but Triumph have shuffled the range around a bit, dropping the base Tiger 900 and introducing a Tiger 850 Sport instead. In the same way that the BMW F750 GS is an electronically detuned version of their 850 GS, the Tiger 850 Sport takes the same engine as the 900 but reduces output to 84 horsepower peak as opposed to 94. But with the price 200 quid lower than that discontinued base Tiger 900 and the introduction of a daytime running light as standard and some tasty new colour schemes, I reckon it looks like a good deal if you're looking for an affordable Triumph adventurer. Yamaha updated their super popular sports naked, the MT-09 this year, and as such most of the improvements get carried over to their Adventurer Tourer based upon the same platform, the Tracer 9. Power and torque are slightly up with 117 horsepower peak at 10,000 RPM, whilst a 9% increase in fuel economy has resulted in better range. Gearing is a little taller, whilst the shift fork and clutch have both had tweaks to improve the smoothness of shifting. Weight has been shed from the chassis and wheels, while strength has been added for an increase in load capacity, but it's the electronics that have had the most noticeable jump in advancements. A new ride-by-wire throttle and 6-axis IMU bring lean, sensitive rider aids that Yamaha say have trickled down from their R1M superbike. There's also cruise control as standard, LED lighting all round, and a split TFT screen which is unlike any other dash in this list. As with the previous generation, there's a GT version available which adds semi-active suspension, hard luggage, a quick shifter, heated grips, cornering headlights, and a dedicated R1M inspired finish. They also announced a GT version of the Tracer 9's smaller sibling, the twin-cylinder Tracer 7, which again gets luggage, as well as a taller screen and a more comfortable seat. And that rounds off all of the updates that we know about so far for 2021. There could still be more on the way though. An updated Triumph Tiger 1200 is expected, as the current version isn't Euro 5 compliant. Spy shots so far have shown something that's visually more in line with the Tiger 900, which in my book is certainly a good thing as it's a cracking looking bike. I was also hoping to see Husqvarna's Norden 901 on the market this year, which is a beautiful redesign of KTM's 890 Adventure, but unfortunately it looks like it's been pushed back to 2022. And lastly, Aprilia have unveiled their RS660 middleweight sports bike and the semi-naked version in the Tuono 660, both of which have been well received so far. So the adventure version, called the Touareg 660 that they've already teased, ought to be pretty good as well, and from the spy shots I've seen it doesn't look to be far off. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the latest and greatest in the adventure market, and money no object, which one would you have in your garage? Personally, I can't wait to see a group test of the 1250 GS, Multistrada V4, KTM 1290 and the Harley Pan America. They all look like great options for rugged long-distance touring, and quite honestly, I'd be happy with either of them. But let me know your pick down in the comments below, and if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.